Today we're playing WorldBox, but every 100 years I am going to cause an apocalyptic event that destroys humanity, or it doesn't, we'll have to see. To begin, I generated this beautiful little blue marble of a planet here with several different continents, many of which are connected. I then began planting the seeds of life on our little planet, our very first humans. The atom to our Adam and Eve equation here is named Voodoo, and the Eve to our Adam and Eve equation is named Soggy. Alright then, with the two of them came our very first baby humans and our very first village known as Ishes. Ishes began growing in population extremely quickly by a process that I could only assume is known as inbreeding. That's my best guess. Now of course though, humans are not the type to just settle in one place, nay, they need to branch out. So after Ishes came Abitina, I believe, and this was our second village of course, which also began quickly growing in population as well. Alright, so it is currently the year 25. We're going to check in on our people here. We have our Eve of the world, who is now 41 years old, so she was 18 I think when we started, of course. It is the year 25, as I mentioned. We have a world population of 73. It's still under the same kingdom. We have the same kingdom with two different cities in it. We have 115 mobs, which I think is mostly just wildlife and humans, of course. We have 18 total deaths thus far, 27 houses, and a shit ton of vegetation, of course. Let's check in on our Adam of the colony. He's about the same. He's doing pretty good. He has 19 children. I think our Eve does as well, correct? She's got about 20 children, so that means she has one by somebody else, of course. So I guess they may have fallen out of love there. She's a diplomat, and he is a diplomat as well. They have some normal moods and stuff like that, so that's pretty interesting. But we do have one kingdom here. What I'm expecting is eventually the kingdom will probably populate the entire planet, of course, but it'll most likely be in multiple different kingdoms as I expect them to rebel and things like that. So we'll just have to see what happens as we get closer to day 100. And of course, after we get to day 100, we're going to hit them with an apocalyptic event. I'm sorry, that clip was from the past, and I was too lazy to delete it. But yes, on year 100, we're having an apocalyptic event. Right now I'm stopping every 25 days to check in on the people and the planet in general, but eventually we're going to do every 50 days and most likely every 100 days just to keep things interesting. Speaking of which, yet another 25 years is coming to an end and we have several more villages. You'll also notice that the sky is red, and that's because of an age of chaos. According to the wiki, the age of chaos is a time of blood and death where the world will be in turmoil and anarchy. It's basically just not going to be a great time, apparently. But, you know, I don't really care. We're just going to sit back and watch. Checking in on our Eve of this world, good old Soggy, she appears to be doing pretty well for herself. She is now 66 years old. She has a gold tooth, and she has wisdom, which is always good, I suppose. She apparently also has a legendary wooden sword called the Annihilator that was created by somebody in the main kingdom here, which is really cool. Admittedly, the Adam of our world is a bit less cool. He's the same age as our Eve, of course, but he has a big stick as a legendary weapon and no golden tooth. Their children stretch far and wide across the continent, looks like actually 2 continents, and we have a total of 7 villages and or towns, whatever you want to call them. Right now our world population is 348 with total deaths being 69, of course all natural causes, but you know, of course we'll change that in another 50 years. But with that being said, it's time for me to sit back, throw my feet up, and just watch the planet continue to go on without me. Now you will notice throughout this there appears to be a good bit of fighting. Some of these villages and whatnot are actually rebelling and forming their own kingdoms. This appears to happen several times throughout these 25 days, and unfortunately it is during these 25 days as well that the Adam and Eve of our world end up dying to natural causes, which was very sad for me, but I am glad that they'll be spared the sight of what is to come in yet another 25 years. So for year 75, it looks like we have 2 kingdoms. We have the Upal, which is the rebelling kingdom, and we have our main kingdom, the Ikwa? Something like that. Either way, they're currently at war, and as you can see, like I said, the Adam and Eve of our world are now gone, so we have no favorites in here. Even with the Age of Chaos, though, it looks like humans are doing pretty good, except for the massive rebellions and whatnot. They have plenty of boats, they have windmills with little farms. It looks like they're doing pretty good. Time to sit back once more, though, and let them ride out the rest of their pitiful little existence. Oh, would you look at that? It's already year 100. I found it to be quite ironic, because for year 100, we're currently in an age of hope. And, you know, I don't know about that. For the very first apocalypse, and maybe the last, depending on whether or not they survive, I decided to go with some natural apocalyptic events, like a bunch of meteors falling and hitting the planet. Then I wanted to really spice up the tectonic plates with a holy crap ton of earthquakes all over the continents and all across the entire planet. And just for good measure there at the end, I decided to throw out a bunch of tornadoes. Let's see how they're doing. Well, I definitely have to say things are looking a little bit more grim than they were earlier. But even throughout all of that, humans still persist. Look at that, they're still alive. There is a horrific crackling sound. I don't know if it's their family homes burning down or if it's this tornado sucking a bunch of people up. Regardless though, I would say that's a pretty good first destruction of the entire world. I mean, a good handful of people are still left, but you know, for starters, it wasn't too bad. I'm gonna start giving them 50 years in between checking in on them, especially after an apocalypse like this, just so that they have plenty of time to recover and rebuild their boats and windmills, have more babies, and, you know, I guess just live. As well as wage war on each other, as it appears. And would you look at that, 50 years later, and you almost can't tell that the world ended, kind of, at one point. Everything looks so prosperous. They have windmills, they have palaces. I mean, they already have windmills, but you know what I mean. They rebuilt them, they rebuilt their homes, and look, the population is back. I even managed to discover a young lad running around just having a good time. He was 13 and his name was Voggy. He reminded me of Soggy. I decided to favorite him, but I'm not gonna lie, it really didn't matter because for some reason in another 50 years, he was nowhere to be found. I assume he probably got older and ended up dying in one of these wars that they're waging between their kingdoms, which, you know, made me even more sad, but also made me angry and made me want to end this planet. I mean, look at this massive war going on between these two kingdoms. They don't appreciate the gift of life at all. As punishment for their crimes of taking lives, I decided that I would take lives of my own with yet another apocalyptic event. It's time I teach these little vermin humans what it means to be alive. So obviously the only way to go about doing so would be to spark a massive plague on the entire population. I began spawning in a bunch of mice to help carry the plague. I don't actually think it did that, but I just wanted it to do it because, you know, historical. Now it was time to unleash the virus across the entire globe. You sick, disgusting humans. No, literally, because you all have the plague. You poor, dumb creatures. There was a bit of good news, though. I got the achievement called the Great Plague, which basically means I infected 1,000 people or so. Nothing to be proud of, but I'm proud of it. Here are the current world stats. We have a population of 2,052, and our total deaths are 9,560. Prepare for those to look a little bit different, though. Yeah, as you can see, the population has been reduced to a fraction of its previous size, and this only happened within 15 years of having the plague. I've decided to sit and wait until year 250 to let them see what they've done and see if they've learned their lesson, but unfortunately it would appear they have not, as there are now 4 kingdoms and they are all at war. I have to say though, here in the last 50 years, there wasn't all that much that really ended up happening. They continued doing human things, of course, like going to war with each other and continuing to have babies, so of course the population was booming. But it is actually worth noting that the population still has not yet recovered from the last apocalypse that we unleashed upon them, so that plague really seemed to mess them up. I would assume that some of them still have it to this day, and it's most likely a large cause of a lot of the deaths that are still happening on the planet. Because I mean, I can't really see any reason that the plague would have went away, even if everyone that caught it ended up dying at some some point that means that it's just going to continue being contagious, and you know how plagues actually work. Yeah, sure enough, look at that. So like I said, the population hasn't actually recovered in 100 years. The population is still below 2,000 because of that plague, which is, it's wild. So that was a really good apocalypse. But this one, of course, is going to be even better. Now, by this point, I was sick of natural destruction, and I wanted something man-made. So I began looking through the bombs, and first of all, of course, I decided to go with an atomic bomb because it is the smaller of the bunch. I started looking all around because I wanted to find the most populated city, which is very disgusting of me, but I did eventually find it, and we dropped our bomb. Well, that was a little bit anticlimactic. Looks like we're gonna have to turn it up a few notches. I decided to try out the antimatter bomb, and it was interesting, but still not exactly what I was looking for. Eventually, though, I finally settled on the Tsar Bomba. Ah, now that packs a punch. So, as you might have imagined, I decided that I would throw a bunch of Tsar Bombas at the entire planet, all over the entire planet. And you know what, in the end, that did indeed seem to do the trick. I didn't really expect anything less, but surprisingly, actually, humans survived all of that somehow. It would appear indeed that they are some pretty resilient little creatures. And I'm pretty darn positive that with enough time, this group of humans that managed to survive this nuclear apocalypse could almost definitely, you know what, they definitely could repopulate the entire world. But we'll save that for next time. Until then, see you around. Goodbye.